Welcome everybody to the 2023 NATRC webinar series. Our speaker tonight is going to be Sarah Smith. Many of you have probably judged with her. She's one of our better judges, longtime competitor, been competing since she's been a junior, longtime ride manager and helping with everything NATRC. Welcome Sarah, and she's going to talk about the ride management tonight. Sarah.
Hello everybody. Good to have a bunch of you on board tonight. Hopefully share some good information. I know ride management doesn't sound like a very exciting topic to talk about, but it can be, and I'll try to make it fun. And I love questions, so don't hesitate to ask questions as we go, because there's a lot of material in here. I did try to condense it as much as possible. There are a lot of details, and so I didn't want to get lost in the details. So without further ado, we're going to forge ahead. Like I said, we have our question and answer panel. So I'd appreciate it if you do have questions, if you'd put them in that question and answer panel versus the webinar chat. That way we can actually monitor those questions and make sure that we get them answered for you. So I started chairing rides in 2011. And I was a very pregnant ride manager the first time I chaired. As you can see, I was out marking trail as a pregnant ride manager. And then that was our vet judge, Dr. Regier, and we had to take a fun photo comparing bellies at that ride. Fast forward to 2022 at Indian Caves. Chairing again, and the little girl that was competing is the child that was in my belly in 2011 at that ride. So as you can see, it became a family affair over the years. And you can see Jason, he rode safety at that ride, and Drake was my little assistant. He followed us out on the trails and helped with little odds and ends. So ride management can be a family event as well. So it can be challenging, but not impossible. You know, for those of you that have managed a ride before, or those of you that this is your first time jumping into this boat of management, I'm sure you've heard complaints, you know, about being a ride manager. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's not always easy, but it is a very doable endeavor. No matter how well you plan, the unexpected can happen. We all know that weather, global events, and just the nature of getting a bunch of different people and horses together can be unpredictable, and stuff happens. So, and there's only so much you can do to mitigate it, but good planning goes a long way. So I say this though, because for all of my worrywarts out there, I say that because I am one. So just know that you can plan and plan and plan and plan. You can't plan for everything. So don't think that you can. The main thing to remember is that you're not alone, that there's a lot of people out there that are happy to answer questions and give guidance, you know, whether you're managing your first ride or your 50th. So it doesn't matter how many rides you've managed, there's always somebody willing to help you and answer questions. Because there's always something that comes up, you know, whether you've been doing it forever or not, there's always a question. Stuff happens. Having a mentor is a great way to make your experience better. These are my kids when they were littler. I love this stream of photos because, as you can see, they couldn't get this gate open. So they found another way around and through. And it's just an illustration of, you know, you have a mentor, they can help you figure out a way around or through just about anything. So it's no different with ride management. You know, when you have a new experience, ask questions. So some of the critical components to success for a ride manager. We already talked about having a mentor or a guide. That's one of the first things. But use a time guideline for reference managers. And we'll kind of go over this in a little bit, but that will ensure that you stay on track with your planning. Working within or ahead of that planning time frame ensures that you're not scrambling to do things at the last minute. That's usually when things fall apart. So if you're trying to plan this and do this at the last minute, like trying to secure your judges at the last minute, that's not going to happen. That's probably one of the more challenging things sometimes is securing your judges. Being organized is very important. There's a lot of moving parts to putting on a ride, and being organized is very important. So whether you have a physical folder that you keep on your desk, or if you have an electronic folder where you keep all of your documents, have it all in one place where you know you can get to it and can access it. So if you need to look at stuff, you can get to it. Have a good team. Have people that you can count on, and don't be afraid to delegate duties to take some of that work off your shoulders. You don't have to do it all. If you're trying to do it all, you're going to burn out. Ask for help. Many hands make light work. It's also a lot more fun when you can breathe a little, and then make sure you're communicating with your team and your volunteers clearly and timely. I've just found, and I mean, I'm guilty of this too. I've found that my most difficult experiences as a ride manager have come from when I have not communicated well with my team, and when I've tried to do too much of it myself, and typically that happened because I didn't prepare well enough, or I didn't plan ahead, or I let life get in the way. And then it was, oh crap, I should have done that 2 months ago, and I didn't. So, half of what I'm telling you now is probably because it's a mistake that I have made in the past, and it's made things more difficult for me as a manager, and also made it more difficult for my team as well. So just, if you can avoid that at all costs, do. I do realize we've had managers who have put together incredible rides in less than 60 days. They recognized, hey, we just lost a ride. We want to try to get one back on the books. And they've managed to pull it off. And that takes some serious work and dedication. It can be done. So it has happened, and it can happen. And kudos. I had to share this because, this is all about cookies, right? And this is me. So where do you start? And I always say the first thing you need to do is visit our website and go to our management page on the website. You do have to be logged into your account on our website in order to access this page. But we have everything you could possibly need as a ride manager right here. It's a one-stop shop. Review our management manual. That's the first thing. Review that. Take it over. Get familiar with it. Look at all of the forms and resources that are available on our website. We try to keep adding everything on there. We try to keep it up to date, current. So if anything has changed with our policies, everything there will be current. So make sure that you're going there first and looking at it. I did reference the website link here. So if you want to take the moment to write that down, but otherwise, literally go there, just go to our website, log in, and go to our admin tab.
I'll make one comment, Sarah. You don't need to have the .coreware in the middle of the name. Just natrac.org will
Yes.
get you to the ride management page.
So, yeah, management documents. There's a few things that we'll go over tonight that have been added to the website as well as helpful resources, and they will be referenced during this presentation. And this is one of them. So this is management timelines. These aren't an end all be all. This is just recommendations. So again, this is on the website. So you can pull this, print it, use it for your resources. And this just kind of gives you a handy timeline for basically a year out from your ride. If you have the luxury of a year to plan for your ride. I realize not all of you will have that, but it just breaks it down to all of the different little planning components, to securing your volunteers and when you should secure these various volunteers, planning your food, awards, planning your trail, your maps, working with your trail master on stuff, developing your maps, securing your safety riders, your on-call farrier. So as you can see down this list, it kind of just talks about all these different things. And, you know, a lot of these things may not apply to your ride, but they're in here just in case they do. So this is a really helpful thing, especially when you're getting started. And it just kind of gives you an idea of, well, gosh, when do I secure my judges? Do I do it now? Do I do it later? You know, when do I do this? When do I do that? It just takes some of that guesswork out for you newer managers that haven't done this before. The sanction application. So one thing I do want to reiterate to new and existing ride managers, please, please, please make sure that you're using our most current forms, which again are sourced on our website. And the main reason is because we do update these forms usually a couple of times a year for a variety of reasons. You know, most recently we updated stuff with LED. So a lot of those forms adjusted for that reason. You know, we've had to adjust fees. You can see my mouse here. So we adjusted all of that. So the main thing is when you are filling this out, most of this should already be a go for you because your date requested, you probably would have already worked that out with your regional ride coordinator. So really your date requested should already be set. It shouldn't even be an issue by the time it comes to the national office and is being looked at by our sanction team because you've already cleared that with your region ride coordinator. Most of this stuff is self-explanatory. Where we do have people get confused sometimes is between B1, B2. So if you're offering, for example, if you're doing 2 back-to-back leisure rides in a weekend, you want to make sure that you're checking both of these boxes. So B1 Saturday, B2 Sunday, and this leisure section. We've had people get confused about it and not check both when they were doing back-to-backs. So make sure that you're marking both. And if that's the case, then when you're checking this, you can see the price differentiation. So LED only, B1, B2, back-to-back. Then if you have 2 back-to-backs, it's $50. If you're only doing 1 LED, it's $25. So just make sure you're looking at all of the differentiation in the pricing. If you are doing a type A 2-day ride, but also offering any of these other ride types, a B1, a B2, leisure rides, any of that in conjunction with your type A ride, it's all included in your $75 sanction fee. You don't have to add on any other fees. I've had a lot of questions around that. So I want to take the opportunity to talk about that tonight, just to clarify that, especially from newer folks filling out this paperwork. You want to make sure that you put any limited entry. So if you have a certain number, most rides cap a type A ride at 60, but maybe your facility where you're camping has a limited number of camping sites, and maybe you can only accommodate 40 people. You will want to make sure that you're putting that information in here. Sponsoring organization. You only put something here if you are being backed by an organization like Nebraska. We have NATRC, the Nebraska Endurance and Competitive Trail Ride Association. Region 3, they have the San Juan Valley Trail Riders. So like there's different organizations that may be sponsoring the ride, but more times than not, it's individuals that are putting on these rides. So you would not put anything in that blank. It would just be an individual, and that would be your name that goes in here. So name and position of responsible person. Make sure you fill this information out completely. We've been getting a lot of forms that come back not filled out completely. Management's experience relating to the operation of a CTR. So this isn't just the manager. This can be manager, secretary, is anybody that's a part of the management team can be a part of this information in here. Make sure you describe your facilities down in here. So water and camp, toilets. We need to know this information. This will all be included. Talk about the terrain, trails, your approximate mileage. All of this stuff goes in there. Now keep in mind, you may not know the exact details, but put in a guesstimate. You would know per our rule book what you approximately need for timing and mileage. We don't expect this to be exact because we understand you probably haven't gone out and timed your trails or marked your trails or done any of that yet, especially if you're using a brand new location and a brand new trail. We understand you won't have that. So just put in approximate if you have an idea. Maybe you've already ridden there before, so you at least know how many miles of trail are available and you can at least put in some estimates. We don't need your exact stuff. That will come later. So for now, put in your estimates, sign it, and then you can send this form to me. You can pay for your stuff online through our donation form. You don't have to even send a physical check anymore. We can do everything electronically, which is quite handy.
Sarah, we have a few questions.
Okay.
One from Alexa. How does someone become a ride manager?
So anybody can be a ride manager if you're interested. There's no requirement to being a ride manager. You don't even have to be a member to be a ride manager. You just have to be willing, interested, and have the motivation to do so.
From Kristen Johansson, you may get to this, but what if you are also offering a clinic? What do you do then?
So if you're also offering a clinic, you would submit a separate clinic sanction application form, which is also available on the website, because clinics are sanctioned separately. Now that can be included as a part of the ride if you want. We've had several rides do this, so which is great. That's a great way to draw new riders, new members, give them an insight to what our sport is about. So yes, you can do that, but you do need to fill out a clinic sanction application that does get processed. And it also gets advertised and posted separately on the website as well. Because you may have people that would just come to the clinic and not do the ride. So yes, but you can absolutely do that.
Let's see. Kevin Schonecker, how is a ride share different from a ride manager?
They're one and the same. So you'll see those interchanged throughout.
And Christian Johansson, we had a follow-up question. Would insurance cover both the clinic and the LED ride, or do you have to purchase separate insurance?
So it depends on how you are facilitating it. If it is done in conjunction with your ride and held on one of your actual competition days, then they have not required us to have separate insurance if it is during a competition day. If it is on a day, like say you're having it on Friday of the ride, you would have to obtain separate insurance for the clinic if it's not on a competition day. So.
And those are all the questions. Susan Halterman, how do we find out who the regional ride coordinators are?
You, from me.
And back to Alexa, can a first-time ride host a clinic?
Yes, but I do recommend that you have a team of experienced people to support your clinic if you are doing that, just so that you aren't winging it by yourself.
And then it's the follow-up question. And then Kay Gunkel, how do you get your ride on the national ride schedule?
So once you're, typically the ride coordinators get their schedule to us at the national office. But if you are sanctioning your ride, if you didn't get in on the early scheduling system with the ride coordinators, once your ride application comes through the sanctioning process, we make sure that your ride gets put on the schedule. So Bill, for example, he will add your ride to the national ride schedule as soon as we have your sanction application in.
I'll make a side comment. Anytime you're thinking of a ride and you have a date, you can let me know. Bill, that's wwingle@ncert.com. But we want Sarah to know, and we want your ride coordinator to know, and we can get your ride listed as a pending ride as soon as you know the date. The sanction will solidify things. I think that's all our questions for now.
So, so moving on, one of the things I wanted to cover, we get a lot of people that, will tell me, hey, I'm motivated to put on this ride, but I don't have the personal funds to do this. So if they're not backed by an organization or a club or whatnot, they're like, I can't afford to do this. So then what? We have what is called the Ride Management Support Fund. And so I want to talk about this a little bit. Because, while some folks are fortunate enough to be able to afford those upfront costs, not everyone is able to do so. But do not fear, we have this fund. And while this was initially geared for new ride managers and new rides to get them started, it is now also available to existing ride managers taking on new rides or new ride managers taking on existing rides with no existing funds to carry it on. So NATRC doesn't want the financial component to be the barrier stopping a potential ride manager from putting on a ride. NATRC can assist with grant dollars up to $1,000 per type A ride. So it doesn't mean you're going to get $1,000, but you can apply for that. The application process consists of 3 components, and that's the application itself, a budget, an actual budget, and then a brief cover letter explaining your need for the funds. And it's just a brief letter. You don't need to write a dissertation or anything like that. It's just explaining the basic financial need for the funds. Both the application and the budget form that we require are available on our website, all under that management page that I talked about in the very beginning for your convenience. Once those are completed, you'd submit them to me at the NATRC office, and then that gets reviewed by our RMSF committee, and then you're either approved or denied. In some cases, a lesser amount than requested may be approved based upon your budget and other factors. So it doesn't mean that you won't get approved, you just might get a lesser amount. And some of it does depend on the ride type as well. If your ride is approved for the receipt of the grant funds, it is required that a post-ride budget is submitted to the committee for a final review. And then any profit up into the grant amount received is returned, if possible, in order to perpetuate NATRC's ability to continue to support ride managers into the future. Eventually these funds will go away once we have no more to give to people. So if you have a profit off of your ride and you use these funds, we do appreciate the return of money if you have that to give back, because we want to be able to continue to help ride managers into the future. Rides, so if you do not submit a budget back, so the rides that don't comply with this requirement in terms of submitting that post-ride budget, they're no longer eligible for future funds for the application. I mean, we won't accept it. Rides in full compliance, however, may be eligible for future application. So please make sure that you are, returning that budget after the ride and staying in compliance so that we can continue to help you or other managers in the future. This funds, it's a privilege, not a right, and it's not to be abused, but we want to help managers. We want to help people put on rides. Another recommendation is that, anybody that does get these funds is that they're kept in a separate account and kept separate from your personal finances. We've seen a lot of people run into some issues with that when they've combined these grant funds with their personal accounts. So, I mean, we can't tell you where to put the money, but that's just a recommendation, you know, to avoid any conflict of interest. Being conservative is key. So anytime you're putting on a ride, be conservative, you know, and what else can you do to raise extra funds for your ride?
Sarah, there are a few questions. I also have one comment. Also check with your region. Some of the regions have support funds as well.
That's true.
So it's always good to check there. Have a couple questions. Christine Gray, can you explain the cost of ride sanctioning again? And does NATRC provide the insurance for the sanctioned rides?
So we're going to talk about insurance in a little bit. So hold that question. Okay. I think we'll be answering that.
And Molly Kelly has a question. Are there any NATRC support funds for just LED rides and a clinic?
Okay, so first I'll answer Christine's question about the cost of sanctioning. So type A rides are $75. But if you have other ride types with your type A ride, so if you're sanctioning a type A ride, so the 2-day ride, but you're also having a B1, a B2, and you're also doing leisure division within that weekend, then it's still all $75 for all of those ride types. If you are doing a B ride only, B1, B2, whether it's a novice CP open B1, B2 ride or LED B1, B2, it's $25 for 1 day, and then for LED, or $50 for 2 days. So, and it's broken down on the sanction application. It's fairly simple on there, but it will never be more than $75, no matter how many ride types you have in one weekend. And we'll get, like I said, we'll get to the insurance a little further down. And then Molly, yes. So LED rides are also eligible for the ride management support fund.
I'll also make a comment about clinics. For the first two clinics in a region, NATRC will support $100 of the insurance fee as an outright grant to those rides.
Yeah, and it is only the first two. So you want to, and it's based on when you apply for it. It's not based on your clinic date. So if you are planning to put on a clinic, apply for it now. So you can try to make sure you're one of those first two clinics in your region so that you get that reimbursement, because it's a $100 insurance reimbursement. All right. So the next thing I want to talk about is this handy volunteer list. This is also on our management page. And this is just a handy tool to help you kind of keep things organized as you're planning your volunteers for the weekend. Names, phone, email, you know, and any comments or contact dates. It's a helpful planner. So doesn't need more explaining than that, but this is on our website for you. All right, here we go. Insurance. Because stuff happens and it's required, don't forget your ride insurance. So one thing I have noticed is ride managers have been waiting until the last minute to secure their ride insurance, which I do not recommend. I do recommend that you secure this at least 2 months prior to your ride so that you know it's good to go. Some applications have been taking up to 2 weeks to process, if not longer, especially if Equisure is experiencing high volumes. You do have to use our designated insurance policy through Equisure because we do have a specialized policy for NATRC. If you don't have insurance, there's no ride. Bottom line, you will not have a sanction. Your sanction will be pulled if you do not have insurance. So you do have to have it. So our application for insurance is fairly straightforward. But I do notice that I get, there's some common questions that surface from ride managers that are new to the form. And many of them, they ask what to include for the actual competition days. So this would technically include Saturday and Sunday for a type A ride, or 2 back-to-back B rides. So you would not include the Friday of the ride, even though horses are checking into competition. Okay. This confuses a lot of people. Those are technically like Friday and Monday or whatnot are included in your setup and take your tear down setup days. So they're included in your policy already. You already have those included, but you don't have to pay extra for them. And that's the next bullet point, that you do not need to pay for extra setup and takedown days, since there is a day before and after included in your premium around your insured competition days. You can add it if you want, but it's an extra expense that is likely not necessary. So right now, our insurance rate, it's $144 a day. So on average, you're looking at $288 for a weekend of competition with our current policy. I'm also often asked, like, who's required to receive these certificates of insurance? You as a manager, you don't have to send me anything at the NATRC office, because we automatically get a certificate of insurance from Equisure directly, because as the sanctioning body, we're required to have one. So they automatically send it to us. But you would need to verify if certificates are needed by a landowner. So depending on where you're hosting your ride, maybe a landowner needs one, or like maybe the Forest Service would require one. If you have a club or an organization that's funding your ride, it's best that a certificate is provided to them. And then, of course, you'll have one as a manager of the event. So then I'm going to roll right into reporting accidents at rides. Do I or don't I? This has been a really big thing, especially recently. So I want to talk about that in this particular presentation, because I get a lot of eye rolls about having to fill these out. And I get a lot of managers that get kind of irritated about having to fill them out, because some people find them redundant or silly. And I agree, there are some incidents at rides that might seem like it's, frivolous or whatnot. However, I do have to say they have protected us from some frivolous potential lawsuits in the past. So these should be completed anytime someone has an accident of any kind while participating in an NATRC sanctioned event. So if they are affiliated with our ride, whether they're volunteering or competing, they've signed a waiver and they're a part of our event, and something happens, you fill out an accident report, unscheduled dismount or whatnot. And because if you look at our form, so here, it has all this basic information, and it talks about who is involved, first aid is given. The critical pieces, though, are down here. Were paramedics called? Yes or no? Was the injured person taken to the hospital? Yes or no? Did the injured person refuse medical treatment? Yes or no? Typically, on most of these accident records, these are all checked no. And then what this does, this is all helpful information, because then we have this on record here in the national office. So say this person they say they were fine, they go home, and then on Tuesday, I get a phone call and they said they went to the hospital and they decided their neck hurts and now they want to try to sue the ride. This document right here, that document right there could be the one thing that keeps all of us out of the quagmire, because they right here refused care. It was documented that they refused care. And if we don't have this record, we don't have that degree of protection. Now, this record is critical, especially if someone is taken to a hospital, received care. I do send these to Equisure, especially if someone is taken to a hospital. And then what happens is Equisure will send me, they'll actually send me a claim form, which I subsequently forward to the injured party as well as the ride manager. Excuse me. I send those to those two parties. They can determine whether or not, and then it's the injured party that determines whether or not they want to file a claim through Equisure. Whether they want to file for damages or whatnot. But then it's not handled by NATRC, it's completely handled by our insurance company from there. So, so while these, excuse me, while these seem silly, they do matter and they make a difference, and they are there to protect you as a manager and NATRC as an organization.
We have a few questions again from Helen McMahon. Can you think of any? Can you think why I just charged $409 for insurance for a 2-day ride? Is it possible rates are going up a lot for 2023? I have the answer for this. It's if you the standard insurance policy is for $1 million. Some landowners require a $2 million policy, which is I think another $68 per day. And if you have the $2 million policy, that will add up to the $409.
Yeah, because there are the add-ons that you can tack onto your policy, and there are, and as Bill said, there are some landowners that require these additional like umbrella policies. So it does depend on your location, but yes, the average ride insurance is $288 for the weekend without add-ons.
Kevin Schoenecker has a question about the accident form. If refused, should the ride manager have them initial the form?
No. As long as the rules interpreter is filling out the form, and then there's, especially what's helpful is if there are witnesses also. That's the thing. If there's witnesses to any of the incidents, make sure they are also filling out forms and confirming any of those things. The more the merrier. So, but it's sufficient as long as the rules interpreter or another ride official is filling out the form, it's fine. You don't need the initials.
Christian Johansson has a question. So if the accident victim says they are fine, they don't need anything, does that equal they refuse treatment? I.e., there doesn't seem to be a need for treatment in the first place, but do you need to ask if they want treatment?
Nope. If they're saying they're fine and they've refused, then you would mark it that they've refused treatment. Yep.
Christian Johansson again, is there a copy of the policy that we can provide to the landowner to find out if it is okay for their average policy?
So typically if they want a copy, they'll ask for it. And Equisure will provide it to you upon request. So I've never had anybody ask for it. I mean, I don't know, Bill, if you have.
I have not.
But typically they don't care. As long as you have handed them a certificate of coverage, that's really all they care about. As long as they know, most of them just want to know your dollar amount and that you have a certificate of insurance. So, okay, so on to the 6-week progress report. This is a really important document. I threw in this quick tip, and I just put, did you know that only your judges and rules interpreter are actually required to be members in order to fulfill their duties? But make sure that your RI, your rules interpreter, is a current member, and fan memberships suffice. So we've had a few last minute things where we so when we review this, as you can see, you put your rules interpreter's information in here, and it does have it denoted, must be a current NATRC member, knowledgeable of NATRC rules, procedures, and standards. I've had it where because I do verify that your rules interpreter is a member. So please make sure that they are. But the $35 fan membership suffices. So if they're not a member, you pay $35 and be current. So make sure that that's the case. It is really important that you are using the most current 6-week progress report, especially because this form has changed the most out of all of our forms. When you send this in, and I'm getting a lot of these late, like very late. And I realize life gets in the way, stuff happens. But this form is probably going to be one of your most important forms as a ride manager, because this is your final review by our sanctioning team. So whether it's Patsy or Kathy, so whichever of our sanctioning team members approved your sanction application, whether it was Patsy or Kathy, they will be the same team member is going to be the one to review your 6-week progress report. So as soon as you send this to me, I look it over, but then I send it to Patsy or Kathy, whichever person reviewed your sanction application. They'll review your timing, your mileage. They'll look at all of that. I'm looking to make sure your rules interpreter is a current member. I'm looking for, like any other little conflicts I see. But most importantly for me as well, I'm looking at what you need for scorecards. So whether here if it's a type A ride, number of scorecards needed, you're going to put in, all you need to put in is 30 or 40. And that tells me that you need, 30 horsemanship scorecards and 30 veterinary scorecards, or 40. You need 40 horsemanship cards. So don't put 80 because that is, meaning 40 and 40. Just tell me 40. LED scorecards. So one per team. Maybe you need 20. If you're doing 2 back-to-back LED rides, maybe you need 40. So you have 20 for each day. One thing I will say is be conservative. If you know that the rides are averaging 30 competitors or 40 competitors, don't tell me you need 60 scorecards. That's not reasonable. You need to be reasonable in your numbers. So that's for both ride types. But make sure if you're doing both an A ride or a B ride and then an LED B ride, make sure you're telling me both scorecard types. So, because I'm getting a lot of these where they're putting on an LED ride, but they're only telling me the number of scorecards that they need for the type A ride for horsemanship and vet. And I need to know what you need for LED scorecards, or you're going to get an email from me saying, hey, I noticed you sanctioned for an LED ride. I need to know how many scorecards you need. So it just kind of slows things down. So that this, and if we don't have this form, because this form is what tells me, okay, time for me to send you your ride packet. This is what tells me, all right, I'm going to send you your scorecards now. And actually, I just got a 6-week ride report from Sarah for the San Antonio stroll. And so there's a ride packet. I can show it to you right now. So it will come to you for my new ride managers. So you get 2 rule books, one for your rules interpreter, and then for you as a manager. Get a little cover sheet here. Boop. And that one is just this one actually talks about our pilot that we've got going on right now for the vet judging. Documentation for a flyer that's going out for the in your ride packets. This is a ride packet checklist. I don't know how many managers and secretaries are reading it, but I really wish you guys would read it, because there's a lot of information in it that is getting overlooked and stuff's not happening. But it's important that it gets read, because when stuff's not done right, then we run into a lot of issues in terms of where scorecards need to go at the end of the ride when they're completed, where fees need to go, because they go 2 different places. The really important thing is that all scorecards, completed scorecards, need to go to Ruth, which is on that document. The not used scorecards need to come back to me because I recycle them to send to other rides. And it's especially critical this year with the vet cards that they do come back to me because they're pilot cards and we have a very limited number of them. So I don't know if you can see them, but they're with the pilot, they are in red on the back. So, and we have a very limited number of those. So it's really important that those especially come back to me if they are unused. But so you can see you get a whole stack of stuff, scorecards, all of that stuff comes to you in the mail from me as soon as I have that 6-week ride report and everything is good to go, which actually San Antonio Stroll I saw got approved by Kathy and is good to go. So this packet's coming out in the mail tomorrow to Sarah, or actually it's going out to Elaine tomorrow. But that's the process. So that's what this 6-week ride progress report does, is it initiates that part of the process. And it looks like, so I'm kind of looking at questions right now, Bill, and I'm going to just go ahead and answer. It looks like Helen and Alexa both had kind of the same question about how far in advance can you order the scorecards. So that's your answer. So the earliest you can get them is with your 6-week progress report. So when you send in this form, that is what triggers me and my team to review your ride and to send your progress or send your ride packet with the scorecards. And then, okay, Kristen. Kristen asked, can any member be an RI or are there additional certifications needed for that role? The main thing, Kristen, is that the person that you select for that role is knowledgeable about the rules. Sometimes it's easier to just say, oh, we just need to plug that role. We just need to get somebody in that role. But the problem is, as soon as that happens and there's something complicated that needs to be interpreted, and that person's like, crap. So you do want somebody that is at least knowledgeable about our rules. I mean, anybody can take our rule book and read it and probably interpret it. But if they have very, very little knowledge about our sport and how it functions and works, it could still be a challenge to do the interpretation. But please keep in mind, if they are in an absolute pinch or a bind, they can also contact Bill Wingle. He's our National Rules Interpreter Chair. They can contact me at the national office. There's several of us that are, I mean, I've gotten text messages, phone calls on ride weekends with questions about rules and different things. So don't hesitate to reach out. But it is preferable that it's somebody with knowledge of the sport. And Kevin, fan membership is one of our, it's just another, we have our competing memberships, family memberships. We have our we have supporting memberships, which are $50. And we have our fan memberships, which are $35. And both the fan and the supporting memberships are not competing memberships. So somebody that has those two memberships can't compete for points and year-end awards. If they want to compete, they can bump up to a competing membership. The difference between the fan and supporting memberships are the supporting membership still gets a vote within their region and national. The fan membership doesn't. And Alexa asked if you could send in your 6-week progress report early. I mean, you can, but there's really, the point to the 6 weeks is that you don't want to send it in too early, because the whole point is that this is kind of gauging where your trails are, fairly close to your ride. It's just making sure that you have those key personnel in place. And you don't want it to be too far out from your ride, but you also don't want it too close to your ride. So 6 weeks was kind of that happy medium for submitting your form. One quick thing, we've had a lot of struggles in the past couple of years with rides struggling to get veterinary judges just because we don't have as many of them. And, we had a lot of struggles, especially around COVID too. So I just kind of want to go over this really briefly, but we do have what is called the guest veterinary judge option. And I just broke it down to the criteria this is in our rule book. So if anybody wants to know where I got this information from, this application is also on the management page of our website, so you can access it there if you ever need it. But at least 2 of these following 3 criteria have to apply in order for you to even pursue this option. And that is that there are no NATRC approved judges in the applicant's own category. And what I mean by own category, that means veterinary judges residing and available in the state where the ride is scheduled. And an unforeseen occurrence has caused the assigned judge to cancel within 2 weeks of the ride date, which has happened and definitely caused this to come into effect. And at least 3 NATRC approved judges in the applicant's own category have refused the invitation to judge the right in question. And this has been one of the other big factors to that. So this is an option. Another part, make friends with RMS. It's no secret that our ride management system does leave something to be desired, but it does do an adequate job of handling our ride entries and processing data. So the sooner you get familiar with it, the better. And while our ride secretaries tend to do most of the work in RMS, it's good for all management to be able to function in the system because it's good to be able to look at the system, look at your entries. Maybe you need to assist with entering a rider by proxy. We still have a few rides that are still trying to make paper entries work. Please don't. Please use RMS because we use it for our national data processing as well. So either way, your data goes into RMS, and in the end, it's much more efficient. And you can use those spreadsheets at your rides and after the fact. So please use RMS. Ride briefings. So we do have a helpful tips for ride briefings, guidelines for managers. And like I said, there's a pretty decent checklist for what you should go over during your briefings. But gosh, thank your volunteers and competitors for being there. They're the reason for your success. Ultimately, think of your ride briefing not only as a time to go over maps, but this is your time to communicate everything to competitors and volunteers that you need them to know about your event. So anything about your camping, any restrictions about the camp or the area, reiterate important policies. One of the big ones, the dog or NATRC dog policy. Again, that's huge. Not having dogs in the public area, having them on a leash, whatnot. Good time to go over all of that stuff. But the main thing is plan and write down what you want to share for each briefing. Don't wing it because you'll ultimately forget something. I've tried to do that. It doesn't work very well. And some of the worst briefings I've ever sat through were the managers that were trying to wing it. So write it down. And then the other helpful thing to writing it down is if you have someone that couldn't make it to briefing, you can take those notes that you wrote down to share with your group, and you can deliver that same exact information to the person who couldn't be at briefing or to the people that couldn't be at briefing. That way you're giving them uniform information.
Sarah, one follow-up question for judging from Alexa. How do you choose a vet judge? How do you choose a vet judge for a ride? And do they have to be an NATRC member?
So all judges for all of our rides have to be one of our actual certified judges, which on the management page on our website, we have our certified judges, approved judges list. And you can select a judge from every one of any region, any judge that's on that list, horsemanship, veterinary, or LED. So depending on what kind of ride you're hosting, you can contact and hire any one of those judges. And all of those judges are members. All judges are required to be members. If you are utilizing a guest judge, since we have our free membership option, most of them, if they're not already members and haven't been members, we can usually utilize that free membership option for them. But yes, all judges have to be members, and we have our approved judges list to select from that's on our website. Whoops, sorry, go back. Keep your ride on time. This often gets ride managers in trouble, as if they don't create an established agenda for the weekend and stick to it. You know, a well-managed ride sticks to a set agenda and timeline as much as possible. You know, it reduces frustration for everybody involved, as they know when and where to be at all times. You know, maybe your judge wants something that's outside of the agenda. That's okay, as long as you can make it work without impacting your ride and timeline significantly. So check in with your judging teams, especially at the end of each day's ride, to see if there's any assistance needed in finalizing scorecards or anything else to expedite the awards process. There's nothing that frustrates riders more than sitting around waiting and waiting and waiting for a long time for awards, especially if they need to get on the road. So, you know, as a manager, do whatever you can to expedite some of those processes that tend to get frustrating for those that are waiting. And when I talk about, you know, does your judge want to do something outside of the agenda? This doesn't happen that often, but every once in a while it does. So just remember, you're in charge. It's your weekend, your schedule. So odds and ends. So here we go. You are the boss. The buck stops with you as the manager. It can be a little intimidating being a ride manager, especially those first few times, but don't be afraid to be the leader. You can be diplomatic while still being the one calling the shots. So, you know, everyone there is working technically for you. So as managers, you know, we have the responsibility to ensure that our events fit the sanctioning criteria for NATRC, and we can't be afraid to speak up if something is falling outside of our rules, policies, or judging parameters. The manager, secretary, and trail master and rules interpreter always have access, you know, to the plethora of resources on our website, as well as help. You know, it's only a phone call away or a text message. Yeah, like I said, I've handled phone calls and text messages on weekends of rides if somebody's run into a jam or questions that couldn't be answered. So don't hesitate to reach out. You can also reach out to your sanctioning chair that's on your approval paperwork. So, you know, Patsy and Kathy, both of those ladies are more than willing to answer your questions. If you're in the middle of a ride and you run into a problem with your, you know, maybe you need to change something with your ride type or whatever, you know, there might be a question about something. So just reach out to them because they can answer questions as well. Rules interpreters can contact me or Bill, which I had mentioned. We're here to help. But most important, have fun. It's work, but we do this because we love the sport and we want to share it with others. You know, without ride managers, without you guys, you know, putting on these rides, you know, we have nothing, right? Our sport doesn't happen without you putting on rides. So, you know, kudos to you taking this step. For those of you that have been managing rides, you know, for years, I appreciate you being here and thank you for doing it because it is work. You know, I'd be lying if I said it wasn't because it's not easy, but it's very doable. And really just, you know, taking the time to research and plan and put stuff together and get a good team around you, ask questions. But that wraps up all of my information. I thought I'd include like a fun little cookie recipe for you guys, you know, since it's all about cookies tonight. But any questions that we haven't covered? If you do think of anything or there's any, you know, if you can't find something on the website that we've talked about tonight, under the management section, you can always email me. That's my email right there. I'd be happy to help you find it. If you need additional resources or have additional questions for me, you can always email me. I'm here as well. But yeah, we tried. If there's more, resources we can add to the website, let me know. Looks like, okay, we've got a few questions here. Kristen asked about other sources for funding. So some of the other regions have a couple of pots for ride management. I think Region 5 has something that they do for ride managers. I know Region 3 has something for ride managers. I know a lot of the rides have been doing raffles and silent auctions. So that's definitely something we encourage to try to help fund your ride locally if you don't have another external source. Catherine asked, how do you find out who's currently managing a ride so you can find someone to shadow? So if you go to our national website and you look at the ride schedule, the current ride schedule, you can filter it down to your specific region and look at it'll tell you who the ride manager and the ride secretaries are. But if you want, you can also just contact me directly at the office and I can help find you a mentor. I can help line you up with someone as well. So whatever is easier for you. You can either look at the website and see who the current managers are, but otherwise I'm happy to try to help line you up with someone. Rihanna asked, what about a mentoring program for managers? So every region has something a little different. Region 5 has a pretty solid mentoring program in place for managers, but most of it's just one-on-one. So if you're interested, we would line you up with one person directly that would help you do whatever you needed to do. So that way it's really specific to your needs as opposed to just kind of letting you loose with a couple of people. So, because there, some people need more support than others. It really depends. But as far as a very specific program, we don't have one that is nationwide just because every region's a little bit different. Rides are a little bit different from region to region. Some of the way we carry stuff out is a little bit different. And some of these regions are really spread out. Like Region 5 covers a huge area. So we try to make sure we get people lined up with mentors that are also in their general vicinity too. Let's see. Kristen, also good ideas for how to get items to put into registration packs or get donations for rewards. So some of our sponsors, our national sponsors do stuff. Riding Warehouse is really good about supporting local rides. If you reach out to them, sometimes they'll do discount slips. Sometimes they'll do gift cards for awards. Sometimes they'll donate equipment and tack every once in a while for that. The other thing too is you can put sponsor information into the packs if you want. But a lot of, some people will go to tack shops and get donations. I've gone to like TSC and they've donated halters before. They've donated buckets, bongars. Like some of those places will donate odds and ends for awards. So kind of think outside the box. Feed stores. Don't forget about like Rogue, our national sponsor, Rogue Pet Science. They'll donate horse supplements for awards too. Kristen also asked, is it worth to ask companies for raffle items? And about asking NATRC sponsors. So be careful with our NATR sponsors because most of them have already contributed a considerable amount to the national organization. The only reason I mentioned Riding Warehouse is because they have a specific program that they have in place where they donate to rides, local rides and events. So they're set up a little bit differently than some of our other sponsors. But like I said, Rogue Pet Science, that's part of their sponsorship, is providing awards and providing supplements for specifically for awards. That is part of their agreement. So don't be afraid to contact them for that, because that is part of their agreement. But a lot of our other sponsors, I would suggest not doing that, simply because, I mean, if you want to purchase something from them to use as an award, that's great, but I wouldn't be asking them for freebies. But any other company, I mean, there's a lot of other companies that aren't sponsors for us nationally that, hey, go for it. Alexa asked, how soon do you want to order awards for your ride? That really kind of depends, Alexa. It's a little bit more challenging now, because riders are signing up for rides much later than they used to. So it's a little bit harder sometimes to plan, especially if you're wanting to order ribbons and such. You're almost always going to order probably more than you need and then have an overage. But that's also okay, because then from year to year, you can always just order what you need to fill back in what you used from the year before. So it's kind of half a dozen of one to the other. So depends on how you choose to do that. But I don't know, most people tend to get them about 2 or 3 months in advance just to make sure they have them. But we've, like a lot of our rides, we've gone to doing certificates. And then that way we're able to print them, a few days before the ride, and we kind of know what we're getting into. It's a little bit less expensive. So it kind of depends on what you want and what you want for awards and how much you're wanting to spend on awards. Some of our awards are handmade. So that's another thing. I've made my own sweepstakes awards. I wood burned on handles of pitchforks, and did wood burning for like open sweepstakes, novice sweepstakes, and stuff. So kind of depends on how you want to spend your money and how much time you have, but you can get really creative. Catherine asked, are ride managers allowed to compete in the ride they manage? No, ma'am. Unfortunately not. Now, ride secretaries can. Once their duties are wrapped up, they got everybody checked in, or not, even if they don't, they're able to compete. But they are the only part of management that's able to compete. Alex asked, are there any spousal limits to any positions? So, yes. And that's primarily rules interpreter. Rules interpreters, judges. Yes. If you were the rules interpreter or the judge, then your spouse would have to write DO. Well, thanks everybody. If there are any other questions beyond this, feel free to email me. I'm happy to answer them, and I appreciate everybody attending tonight. But this webinar is also recorded, so you can always go back and look at the information, and if there's anybody that missed it, they can always review it later too. So I appreciate it, and you all have a good night.
Thank you, Sarah. We'll be continuing the webinar series throughout the rest of the year. I'm not sure when our next webinar is going to be. I'm expecting March or April. But thank you for attending tonight, and we hope you found this was worth your time. Everybody have a good night.